Happy holidays, Kindreds. Laura and Lindsay here from Kin, and today we have a super fun tutorial for you that combines a whole bunch of different recipes, some big and some small, to pull together a gourmet, plant-based, gluten-free, delicious, and healthy holiday platter.
Most of the recipes on this platter can be prepped in advance, so maybe take your time with this one and pick and choose the recipes you want to tackle on which days to better suit your schedule.
Now we have some tips to share with you so that you can create a crowd-pleasing board that even the kiddos and the meat eaters are going to love.
Tip number 1, plan it out. So this takes a little bit of time, but it's worth it for the final creation, and it helps to keep you organized so you're not scrambling at the last minute to fill the plate. We like to scratch down a bunch of snacky recipe ideas and then pare that list down to better suit the theme, the mood, or the event.
Tip 2, include foods and recipes that have a variety of textures and flavors. So think creamy, crunchy, dense, light, and the 5 flavors: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and savory. Also, don't stress if you can't get those all combined on one board. It's not a big deal.
Tip number 3, make it vibrant and colorful. This can go a long way simply because of how pleasing it is to the eye. Fortunately, the plant world is full of color, so this is pretty easy to accomplish.
Tip number 4, use a selection of different dishware, even in different styles and shapes, and that will give your board more of an eclectic feel. We've showcased a few different examples here for you to take a peek at. So basically what you do is you start with 2 or 3 main dishes, fill them up with your recipes, and build the board out from there. Now we want to choose the rest of the elements on the board to both complement the main dishes and sometimes act as a functional item on the board. Like an example of that would be a sturdy, crisp carrot to dip into a hummus.
Tip number 5, give some attention to the filler items. So there are always holes and spaces that need filling on a board, and this is what gives it this abundant and full look and adds to the overall pop of a platter. We like to add nuts and seeds, or an unexpected fruit like strawberries or cherries, or you can add an earthy, organic feel with a fresh herb like rosemary. And a bonus tip, and maybe the most important one, is just to have fun with this and don't take it too seriously. You can really get away with having 2 items on a board with some yummy crackers and fresh fruit, and voila, you're good to go. So just enjoy the process. Now that we have that covered, let's get started on the first few recipes.
Okay, I've got my hair back and we're ready to go here. We are making our vegan meatballs. Now, this recipe doubles as both vegan meatballs and our vegan lentil loaf. So you can pick and choose what you want to make. You can make this big batch mixture and yield either 3 lentil loaves, or you can yield a whole bunch of meatballs, or you could choose, of course, to do 1 loaf and use the rest of the mixture to make your meatballs. Now, this recipe is the main sustenance bite on our platter, so it even acts as the meat on the board. It's like if you just had a couple of these meatballs and nothing else, you would actually feel like you had some good, wholesome food in your belly rather than just having a nibble here and there. The flavor and the texture of this recipe really gets people, and everyone really loves the flavor. So let's get started. I've got my hot plate on, and the first step is to cook down our fresh chopped veggies. So I'm gonna hop over here and get started with that. So I'm just gonna add about a tablespoon of olive oil to the pan here. And we'll let that heat up. And we'll start with our garlic and onion to saute, and then we'll add in our carrot and celery. So I've got my prepped garlic here. It's going in. That's gonna start smelling really nice. And I'm gonna toss in the onion as well, and just give that a little stir. There's nothing better than the smell of onion and garlic sauteing away. And it reminds me of making soup. Actually, these ingredients are very similar to our soup broths that we do. Okay, let me throw our other ingredients in, and then while everything's cooking down in the pan, I can start to blend all of our dry ingredients together. I'm adding the carrot. Oh, I need my onion goggles on. Don't have those here. You're gonna have to deal with my eyes watering. Okay, let's cook this down. I'm gonna turn the heat up just a little, and then we should be good to go. All right, that's everything there. Let's jump over here and get our dry ingredients into our food processor. So this is really the best piece of equipment to use for this recipe. We've tried it with a blender, and it's just a little bit trickier to really get all the ingredients incorporated. So let's begin by just adding all of our dry ingredients right into the bucket here. We're gonna throw our pumpkin seeds in. That's a lot of pumpkin seeds. Super nutritious, so loads of minerals and vitamins and antioxidants in those babies. Lots of really good healthy fats too. We're gonna add our oats. We have Italian seasoning. We have some ground chia that we're going to add in that acts as our egg, our vegan egg. We have some brain healthy walnuts we're gonna throw in. Nutritional yeast. This gives a really yummy, umami, almost cheesy flavor to vegan recipes. And it's high in the B vitamins. And for salt, I'm just gonna add a few pinches and then continue to add as I taste. I don't want to over salt it, so that's why we say use some pinches of salt. So I'm going to start with that. That was about 4 pinches of salt, and then I can always add more. And same with our black pepper. So we'll pinch this in. And let's get started here with pulsing this up. Make sure I've got this on. So we can use the pulse here because the pulse helps to really shake the ingredients in and just get them pulsed, and then we can kick it onto a low blend. Here we go. So we want to blend this down so that it is a semi-coarse meal. We don't want it to be so fine that it's like a flour, because we do want the texture in our meatballs and in our loaf. Good, so that looks actually really good, just like that. See, if you're all prepped, it can be relatively quick and easy, and the more that you practice this recipe, the quicker it will become, even if it might seem a little overwhelming at first. It's totally doable when you break it down into steps. All right, so we're gonna, let me see here. Oh, there we go. We're gonna pop that off and just add this whole dry mix to our big mixing bowl. And hang on to the blade. And I'll put this back on. So we don't even need to wash this in between. We're gonna add all of our wet ingredients and pulse them up too, but it's okay if they get a little bit of the dry mix on them. This is a new food processor, don't mind me, just figuring it out here. Okay, let's check out our frying pan over here and see how things are going. I'm gonna turn this up and cook this down a little bit more because I want the veggies a little bit softer. All right, our veggies are mostly cooked down. Took about 10 minutes or so to get them nice and tender and get the onion and the garlic cooked down. And so what we're gonna do now is we're going to process up all of our wet ingredients. So that's going to include all the wet ingredients here that I'll tell you about as we go, our lentils, our rice, and our stir-fried veggies. So we also wanna keep some whole lentils and some whole veg aside. So what I'm gonna do is just scoop out about half of the green lentils here, and I'll keep the rest just in the bowl. When we keep a little bit of the whole ingredients, it really helps with the overall texture of the recipe. Okay, so we'll leave those. And I'm gonna put our whole rice in. This is wild rice. So even just with the lentils and rice, we can see that this is a very protein-forward recipe. We've created a complete protein with the lentils and rice. And we also have loads of fiber in this recipe. So between all the veggies, the whole grain and the lentils, the oats and all the nuts and the seeds, this is a pretty wholesome meal. All right, I think we're ready to add this. So I'm gonna turn this guy off. Hopefully I clicked that the right way. And let's just spoon this in. Smells like soup in here. I'm gonna leave the rest, actually one more scoop. That should be good. I'll put that in there, balance. And the rest I'm going to leave whole. Mind the pan in your face. I'm just gonna add these into our dish with the lentils so we can get this pan out of our way. Okay, there we go. So we're just gonna clean this space up a little bit and continue to add the rest of our wet ingredients. All right, we've got a little more space. We're gonna add our tomato paste. This is 2 cans of tomato paste. Get in there. Fortunately, we have a pretty big food processor here, so this allows for 12 cups of food. And we have some Caribbean hot sauce here, a Scotch bonnet hot sauce that we're going to add for a little kick. I'll put that there. We have some maple syrup to balance out all of our flavors. You could probably use honey here too if you didn't have any maple syrup. And some apple cider vinegar. We have some Dijon mustard. Getting pretty full here. And we have miso paste. So this adds a really delicious savory or umami flavor to the loaf. Let's throw that in. And we're gonna hold off on the salt and pepper until we can taste it, and then we can add a little bit more as we go. So before I turn this blender on, I'm just gonna give it a little mix with my spatula first. And we're good. We still have lots of room in there actually. Set that there. Okay, we've got another blitz coming. Oh, I forgot an ingredient. Cheeky little tamari hiding in the cup. Tamari, a little more umami. That adds a nice little salty element as well to the loaf. Here we go. Let's take a peek and make sure we are happy with this consistency. So it doesn't have to be perfectly pureed, but we definitely want it blended, all blended together and blended pretty well. That's actually pretty good. And this is quite wet mixture right now, but we'll give you a closer peek at that. And we're going to add now the wet to the dry. We're gonna add our whole lentils and veggies and mix it all up and give it a little taste before we form our meatballs. Alrighty, let me add this wet pureed mixture to all of the dry. And be careful because the blade wants to come out with the mixture. So you have to get a certain amount out and then grab onto it. Yep, it's just right in there. Let's just put that aside. Catch. Just gonna put this on this magic plate that came into the shot. There we go. Let's get the rest of this in. Can smell all of those ingredients actually. All right, that's good. I'll just set this back here to live. And we can start to incorporate this, and then I will add the final whole lentils and veggies. I'm gonna get in here with actually our bigger spoon. That'll be more helpful. Yes, that's better. Great, so I can see already that the dry mixture is starting to absorb the wet. It's gonna come together nicely. And these kind of like batch prep recipes are so great because you can really have lots of extra stored away in the freezer for a dinner one night. Or like we said, you could make 3 loaves, and usually around the holidays you have a few different dinners and things to go to, so you can bring a loaf for each evening that you attend. Okay, I'm gonna add in the rest of the whole ingredients, and then we'll taste for salt and make sure we're happy. All right, we have everything incorporated here. So just a little tip, if you find that your mixture looks a little bit too wet, like you're not going to be able to easily form your meatballs, you can add any kind of gluten-free flour just to absorb some of that moisture. We can't always predict how much moisture is going to be in our fresh veggies, so sometimes it ends up a little bit too wet, sometimes it can end up a little bit too dry, and you just have to make the best of it and add a little bit of dry stuff or a little bit of wet to get the good consistency. We like using oat flour, so we're pretty good right here, and we don't need to add anything right now. I'm gonna give it a little taste and make sure we're happy with the salt. Yeah, it tastes good to me. So I don't need to add any more salt. You may if you'd like. And we're gonna get ready to roll these into our meatballs. Rings off for sure, because that can get pretty gross. We'll set those there. And I have a little dish of olive oil to help with the stickiness of the mixture, so I'll just put a bit of that on my hands so it makes it a bit easier to roll our meatballs. And you will have to take a break partway through to clean your hands off, because they will get pretty gunked up, and then just start the process again. Let this be a meditation. We want to make our meatballs a little smaller than golf ball size because they're going on the platter, so it could either be 1 big bite or 2 smaller bites for someone. And we'll just start to load up our tray. We have the oven preheating to 350 degrees. Oop, that one's a bit big. Shave off a little, re-roll. And don't worry, they don't have to all be perfect size or perfect shape. Okay, so definitely take a break to wash your hands. They get pretty mucky in that process. But there we've got a beautiful tray of our vegan meatballs, and we still have a lot of mixture left. So I'm going to scoop out enough mixture to show you how we make one of our vegan lentil loaves. So we just have some parchment paper with some olive oil prepped in our pan. And I'm just gonna scoop it in, and then I'll level it out once we get a good amount in there. You can kind of mash it down with your spoon. You could also bake your loaf in this way and add this to a platter just by adding slices of the loaf to a platter, just as a different form than the meatballs. Okay, so we'll kind of take the mixture right to the edges. I don't want to pack it in too much because I do want it to be able to bake through. We want to leave a little bit of air in there. And that's about it. So there is our loaf pan ready. Here's our sheet of meatballs ready. We're gonna bake these at 350 for anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes. You might have to do a little check, a little taste check. And in the meantime, we're going to make up our sauce that's going to go on top of all of this. And what we'll do is we'll pull these items out of the oven. In the last 10 minutes, we'll add the sauce, put them back in, and let them finish off for the last 10 with the sauce on. So let's jump into the sauce making. All right, our vegan meatballs and our loaf is in the oven baking away, and I'm going to quickly throw together our meatball sauce. So a lot of the ingredients in this sauce are also in the loaf. We've got our tomato paste. I'm gonna add in, and we can just basically mix all this together in a bowl. There's nothing too hard that needs to be blended, so this will be fine. And we're adding some tamari. Try not to spill. We have some Dijon mustard. Maple syrup, little sweetener. I want to get all that good stuff in. And some apple cider vinegar. So I'm just going to use the spatula to really incorporate this and get it all blended up nicely. And then it will be about time to brush it onto our meatballs and our lentil loaf. Okay, that's it, we're good to go. Alrighty, our meatballs and our loaf have been baking for around 30 minutes at 350 degrees, and they're perfect. So they're even nice and crispy on the outside from that olive oil coating on my hands when we rolled out the balls. So nice and hard and crispy on the outside and soft on the inside, which is just what we want. So we're going to take our sauce now, and we're going to use this handy basting brush and just coat the loaf and the vegan meatballs with our sauce, and then pop everything back into the oven for a final 10 minutes of baking, and we'll be done and we can have a taste. So I can actually just goop a scoop of this on. And then we'll spread it out. Hope you can see that here. Just get to all the edges. There we go, and let's shift over and we'll give each little meatball a coating. Whoop. And let yourself get a little messy here. Got to kind of grab onto these meatballs so that you can coat them on the sides. All right, I'm going to use my clean hand to pop these back into the oven, and we'll be right back with the finished product. Our vegan meatballs and vegan lentil loaf are done. They are perfectly sauced and baked up. I'm gonna have a little taste. They are so good. Alrighty, with our meatballs, we are going to, they've cooled, so we're gonna store them in a glass container in the fridge because we aren't putting our complete holiday platter together for another 2 days. So they'll be perfectly fine in the fridge. And then our loaf, I'm gonna show you that we can slice it up, but I'm just gonna freeze this and we'll use it one night for dinner. I don't need it right away, so it will do well in the freezer. So we can open up the parchment paper and make sure you have a nice sharp knife and just hang on to the sides. And do fairly thick slices so that it does all stay together. And you're just gonna slice down like this. So when we serve this loaf, this is how we usually serve it, is by the slice, just like that. And otherwise, yeah, you can just wrap the rest up really well with some plastic wrap and store it in the freezer for up to a month or 2. All right, guys, this is it. We made it to the end of this recipe. I hope you tackle this one. It is definitely worth it. Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here. If you're enjoying what we're sharing, please give us a like, and you can also subscribe to this channel below.
And if you want to follow us along on this journey, you can find us at kin.co or on Instagram at kinsite.